Racist landlord sentenced to a bunch of years in prison, put him up for a mask, 17 years to be exact. That's a lot of racism if you got sentenced to 17 years in prison because of it. Virginia landlord who threatened to turn Black tenants' children into, quote, potting soil and subjected Black tenants to horrible conditions has been sentenced to 17 years in prison. You're looking at David Merryman on more than 60 rental properties. Many of the properties were in horrible condition. He was charged for defrauding the government and committing years of racial abuse. The federal judge sentenced David to 17 years in prison for orchestrating a fraud scheme from 2019 to 2024 in which he received rent relief benefits he was never entitled to and fraudulently obtained large payments for security deposits, prepaid rent, and other fees for homes in disrepair and in low-income neighborhoods. Now, why is David preying on people in low-income neighborhoods? Well, he's preying on their desperation. He knows that the options are low. Even if you have the money, they will say, but you don't check the box for credit. Or maybe background, because they criminalize ridiculous things, even if you've paid your debt to society. So he knows you have an issue here, but I can solve it. All you have to do is just pay me way more than it's worth, and I'm going to give you way less than the value. There's more. When leasing his properties out to prospective tenants, he intentionally targeted Black tenants with limited credit, limited housing options. Investigators said he would convince them to rent by offering longer tenancy terms and then work to evict them as quickly as possible to restart the cycle of fraud and collect higher initial payments from new tenants. Investigators learned that Merryman harassed his minority tenants on multiple occasions with racial slurs, denigrating comments about slavery, death threats, assaultive, racially charged conduct, which violated their right to occupy and lease a dwelling free from racial harassment, threats, and force. Prosecutors argue that Merryman intentionally used insulting, racist rhetoric to motivate more tenants to end their leases, increase turnover, and collect more money. According to the indictment, some witnesses also reported that some of Merryman's properties had rotting floors, rodent infestations, and improper plumbing, which led to sewage leaks inside of the homes. According to the indictment, Merryman once attributed a clogged sink to a woman's hair extensions. He once told another tenant to, quote, clean the house like you were slaves, end quote, and threatened to turn the African-American woman's children into potting soil. Quote, one that stands out to me in particular may be one of the first tenants interviews inside a Merryman property. This woman had to walk their children down the street because the house she was renting did not have a functioning toilet, end quote. One investigator learned that Merryman even told a tenant that, quote, her stillborn baby was karma for not paying rent, end quote. Merryman also fabricated lease documents, often with incorrect information related to the tenants, and backdated documents before forging tenants' signatures and falsely representing that he was authorized to act on their behalf. During the COVID-19 pandemic, state and federal governments established rent relief benefits for people struggling during the crisis. Merryman forged his tenant signatures and used their personal information without their consent to file fraudulent applications for these pandemic-era rent relief benefits. In many cases, he obtained significant sums of rent relief without telling the tenants, then evicted or tried to evict those same tenants for unpaid rent. Put it back up. So before the sentencing, Merryman read off an apology to tenants and city employees in Newport News, Virginia. Merryman was sentenced to 15 years for wire fraud, 2 years for identity theft. He'll also serve 2 years concurrently with a 17-year sentence for the racial discrimination charges that he faced. Okay. Some people say, well, it's not illegal to be racist. It actually is. It is illegal to be racist. If you are racist against individuals for their domicile, meaning housing, that is against federal law. Yeah, you can get time for that. You can get a civil penalty, or they can charge you under the criminal statute. They charged him under the criminal statute because it was clear and obvious what he was doing. The other stuff simply was his expression based on the catalyst. There's always cause and effect. He's likely very greedy and very racist. And he combined the two and said, okay, well, I will simply con Black people and be intentionally vile against them because he's racist. Best of both worlds for him, and continue to make a lot of money. Now, he did this scheme for a very long time. And the reality is he got away with it for a very long time. And here's the other truth. There are many still getting away with it today. So what's the difference with this guy? People spoke up. People put pen to paper, filed complaint, and the dots were able to be put together. All right. Now, the macrocosm, again, this country provides no answers for those who are facing issues of housing. And here comes a corrupt individual. Yeah, he's not the savior here. But the folk who've been paying taxes to the government can't get the government to do a damn thing for them. So he looks like an option when there are none. And that's the saddest part of the story.